So mask on, unless we're talking apparently, please. And Pine, could I ask you to open our meeting, please?
Ka pai Chair. E te atua whakatūwheratia mai e koe. Kia mātou e tēnei hui, nā huare o te tika, o te oro, o te pono, o te maramatanga kia mātou koe. E whakamoimiti, e whakakroria ki te ingo o tapu. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So welcome everybody and those live streaming in. Just a reminder, we've got to keep our masks in place, and please use the microphone when we talk. So any apologies? I see Pardon? No apologies. Any declarations of interest? So confirmation of non-confidential minutes, will be page 4. Have a mover, please. Thank you, Larry. Seconder. Thank you, Leroy. Any comments, observations? Anybody like to? Any comment, Dave? No. Okay. All in favour? No. Contrary minded? No. Acknowledgement. So here we go. Action sheet. Page 8. Anyone want to make any comments? David? Any questions? Yes, Kerry. Microphone, please.
So it actually probably relates more to the minutes because it's not as an action in here, not really. With regards to the identification of a location for the wetland having been elevated to the highest levels, has that resulted in anything, or do we need to find some higher levels still?
Through the chair, there are ongoing meetings between the mayor and the chief executive and a couple of land blocks. So they're working those through, but they're private property deals that we'll be looking to keep progressing. But we've had the first initial meetings on this.
Anybody else? Any comments off the action sheet? Hearing nothing, so we'll move on. Governance work plan. Page 9. Any comments around here? Hearing nothing. Shannon, happy? We're certainly moving along this morning, aren't we? Leave of absence, acknowledgement and tributes, public input and petitions, nothing. Extraordinary business, notice of motion, adjourned business. So we now go to page 10. So, yes, go.
Just on the governance work plan, and we were talking about this a little bit just previous to the meeting. We seem to be running a little bit light on strategic matters in the in this committee. What else is there that is on the horizon that we're going to be sort of getting to us as decision reports?
So through the chair, I think the Kiwi report that we're talking to today will help drive the direction of your governance work plan going forward, because the Kiwi group have put up a number of topics of interest that they would look to progress for the Wastewater Management Committee. I think a number of those there are the strategic issues that would be looking to work forward in the next 12 to 18 months. There's also the 3 waters reform, which we need to keep you updated on as that progresses. So that is a report that does need to come onto the work plan once we know decisions in October. So that would be at the November meeting, we'll be able to update again. November or December, whatever the next meeting is, sorry.
So I guess to be more clear about the question is, again, those sound like information reports. strategically, are there decisions for this committee to make around those? Is there a practical? I'm trying to get to the heart of the practical purpose while the big portion of our work is currently being delivered, being for stage 2, as to what we might be able to sink our teeth into.
So through the chair, the terms of reference for the Wastewater Management Committee are set by the consent. The purpose of this committee is to look at the performance of council's wastewater management when it comes to the wastewater treatment plant, the reticulated network. The strategic matters are the ones that Kiwa brings to you. There are not other strategic topics for this committee. They're covered off by other committees of council. It's up to the WMC to look at what's been proposed by Kiwa and then decide if those are the things that you want us to look at too. But this is quite an operational committee.
Terry, can
Sure.
I just
Terry.
jump into a little bit Shannon's direction? Where does the Kiwa Group and our committee have any, I guess, input into the decision that's required of council around Three Waters, of which obviously a large component is wastewater? And if the decision is made before this committee next meets, essentially, we're not, the committee itself has not been part of that decision making.
Oh. Bennett, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hence my difficulty with Shannon's request for a strategic plan. I mean, the way council has to work, you've got your infrastructure application you're making. I don't know how we work those types of things in. We see the trouble with steel and concrete. I mean, we really are an operational committee that is a considerable amount of steps behind the general plan. I mean, I don't envy what councillors have to deal with, and that is the difficulty of our WMC. But there is one thing that's on our strategic radar, and that is the consent obligations and us adhering to those. Thank you.
Mr. Wolf. Oh, Shannon. Yeah.
To that effect, then I guess that this committee is the appropriate place for any reporting to come back around the effects of Three Waters specific to our ability to achieve our consenting conditions. For example, the continuation of alternative use and disposal if central government was to take over our water supply, the ability to continue with wetland purchasing, the ability to continue with so it seems like this is the appropriate committee for that work to come to, and there's a significant amount of concern about our ability to deliver our desires in that space.
So for me and my experience in this committee is that we, it should be given a bit more respect for the decisions we make, but it's obviously our decisions that have to be re-endorsed by the full council. So that's the bigger picture for me, is that we're just here to monitor what's in this paper here. Sorry to say.
Let Mr. Wilson respond just to where we're at the stage and more.
So through you, Chair, there's a number of issues that are going to come out of the Three Waters reform. However, we don't know what those are at this time. So for the Wastewater Management Committee, we will definitely bring back what are the implications for the consent for the wastewater treatment plant and for what implications it has on the operation going forward of the WMC. This committee wouldn't be the one that would make the recommendation on behalf of the community or mana whenua as to what those stances are, because I'm sure, I'm not speaking for any mana whenua here, but you would make those decisions through your own channels to government where you have your own partnerships. Council will also be reviewing that itself. So this committee would essentially have some recommendations around the operation, the consenting components, as Angus has said, but then for the wider Three Waters reforms, there are each governance entities which you belong to, which will then make your decisions as to what happens with Three Waters going forward. We will keep you informed as more information comes out, but at this stage, there is no information as to transfer of consents, transfer of anything, because we haven't got any decisions from the government. All they've told us is the case for change and where we would sit within an entity which the committee has seen. So there's very little difference of change of information. The bit we need to wait for is those next steps, and then we'll be able to tell you what the impact of those are. But there's very scant detail at the moment on anything to do with the consenting side of it or what happens next.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dave, but we're all in this position where we're just lacking so much information. And for me, this committee would, giving information or giving a recommendation to council would give the council's recommendation, intention, a lot more grunt, because it's come from the wastewater committee. We've been through the whole wastewater scenario over years and years and years, and yet when we're making this, we've got to make a decision on next Thursday, and we've had no recommendation from this committee. And I believe that this committee has great mandate to give council its preferred options if it was given some options. So for me, going into a council meeting next week without recommendations from this committee or anybody, I'm really up in the air about the validity of our decision.
So through the chair, we will bring the recommendation back to you on the implications of what it means for us in the wastewater space to this committee for you to consider and make a recommendation to council on. What we're saying is there are wider conversations than this committee that each number of the parties will need to be aware of for what they're going to do for their individual entities. So we will, once we know the information, we will bring it to you. But as I said, we don't have any new information. We don't have anything that we can talk through with you yet.
Thank you, Chair. This committee has never changed in its outlook, Larry. That is the one recommendation to councillors, no more poo pipe. How you achieve that, don't ask us to support your personal bias going through on either of the three waters option. So for tangata whenua, it's to clean that pipeline up and then do your dance with the how you do it. But we can't join you in any partial recommendation. You're growling at the other body for not giving you enough information, and you four expect us to help you in some way, and we don't even have a tenth of the information you don't have. Thank you, Chair.
Point taken.
So my take on it is that collectively, not just you, right? Collectively, we should have an understanding of how any proposed changes either slow down or accelerate, because it may accelerate, the ability to deliver on that purpose. And because we don't know that is a gap. Dave's recognised it as not what we want, but it's more the process and the fact that there is going to be a material difference in the way that wastewater is delivered if the reform is adopted. And for the committee that advises on how that wastewater is treated to not have that information prior to it, or at least have the information, much less put the any recommendations, does seem like a process that's back to front. We all collectively have provided information on a whole bunch of things in the past that had the aim of accelerating alternative use and disposal. If for some reason jumping into this entity C slows down that process, I would expect that we would be resisting that. If it accelerates it, then I expect that we would be supporting that. But we don't have that information, and I think it's important in a public meeting that is known.
Sorry, Chair, and while Riette is still with us. So this is a recommendation from this table, and yet you have gone out for submissions from the public about how they feel about Three Waters. So you're saying that you don't have enough information to help this table progress what we're doing with the wastewater, yet you were committed to a public process of putting a survey out there to use figures to show what might or might not happen, which is that grey area that you want us to work on at the moment.
David?
If that's okay, Chair. So can I please clarify for the committee, there is no formal consultation happening at the moment for Three Waters and what happens across, there are no decisions being made by council. There are no decisions being made by government ministers yet either. What's happened is there's been information released from the government that talks about their case for change for Three Waters across the country. The consultation that's been happening at the moment is not formal. It is not something that we are making a formal submission on. It has been, the plan was from DIA was to release the case for change for an 8-week period so that the community could understand and could see what was there. Then they were asking for feedback as to what we thought about it. Did we think it was a good thing or did we think it was a bad thing? It is not formal consultation. There are no formal decisions by council to be made at this stage. The next step is that Cabinet will meet in early October and they will then make some decisions as to what is going to happen going forward. Then we will have information to be able to bring to you for your consideration, but we don't even have anything to bring to council or to the community as to what the decision is going to be made by the ministers in early October. So this period has been around, here are the entities, this is how we would cut up the water resources in New Zealand, have a think about it, we're going to make some decisions, but you've got the information now to know how we're going to make our decisions going forward. For formal consultation with our community, with tangata whenua, will come at a later stage once we actually have something to be able to report to you on. And that's something that the government needs to talk to their iwi partners as well before they're able to do anything.
Pene.
Yes,
Then Angus.
my apologies, Chair. I perhaps got confused with the online survey for the representation one and then the online survey coming for this one. My apologies.
No, thank you. David's really laid that process very clear. Your worship, did you want to comment on that? Or? Yeah, so thank you. Angus.
I was listening to the Tuanga FM on my way to the Hui and I heard Rick give a brief explanation of that Three Waters stuff. And for me, I guess we'll be having those discussions in other spaces apart from here. And most probably bringing back our whakaaro within this role.
Absolutely.
Of course, this is the kaupapa. Our terms of reference is our kaupapa and it's been around for a while. It's not always coming up with time.
Thank you. Shannon.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that my only intention in raising it was to make sure that it landed in our work program in relation to what it has in effect to our deliverables of this committee. It's not currently in our work program. It's not in our that work program we were just looking at. And so I'm just highlighting that there will be cause and effect of those changes and that this committee will have responsibilities to oversee whether it's pros or cons and make recommendations on it. So yeah, that was just my intention to see more of it on this in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I'd just like to ask whether there must probably be a partnership who, sort of forum in regards to this new reform thing, whether, your council are going to be talking to, iwi are going to be part of the conversations.
So just a quick recap of what Dave said, how this process is going forward. So right from the beginning, government got DIA to do this process. So they talk to councils and they have separate consultation with iwi Māori. So they came to Gisborne end of November and they only had one hui. So David and myself went to Rotorua in March and I spoke to the boss of DIA, Brian Hanna, and said, we're really concerned. You said you're coming back to talk to us. You're coming back to not to talk to us or get feedback, to inform us what the government is proposing. Anyway, so there were a lot of email interaction about this lack of consultation with our community, lack of consultation with iwi Māori, and that will be raised this afternoon as well. So the government is running this process. They are half asking us to do some bits on their behalf, but the consultation has been coming through DIA, and that's one of the main concerns we are raising, is that we don't have enough information. We don't feel comfortable that there has been proper discussions with our iwi chairs. Penny, you were at our hui when Brian Hanna and Ben came. So through Rautipu Rawora, I invited DIA to speak to our iwi chairs and council, and I didn't take anything away that day, and that I didn't know that was just roughly written in the paper. I don't know, Penny, if you took something away that day about the intention of consultation or the intention of working with our local iwi. I'm not sure what you found that day. And that was the only proper interaction after talking to us in November.
So for iwi, there have been several interactions and with various groups, and they really are formidable in their desires to see Three Waters pushed through. And they are moving to shift iwi into a more power sharing role, be it there's more iwi in the room than what we have currently in this room. But they are offering opportunities for iwi to be align themselves in those quadrants and sit alongside some of the decision making going forward. So just watching some of the presentations, it's by no means a done thing, but they are able to address responses fairly quickly.
Thank you, and thank you for that, and thank you, Shannon, for driving us back on that. I think that's good to make sure we're on the same page. Leroy.
Sure. Yeah, I guess my concern is that the introduction of these Three Water reforms actually takes us away from the tasks that we've been wrestling with up till now. And so when I see later on coming up that some of the AUD work is potentially going to be delayed to depending on funding and various other things, it concerns me, because then effectively we're going back to the option that we'd already fought so hard to get away from, which is that it's not going to come up until the next long-term plan. And looking at the work schedule for that, and I may be getting a bit ahead, I just see that there's a whole lot of consultation that's not happening until several years from now. And I just prefer to think that we actually deal with some of that consultation now, because as the plant gets up and running and then stuff starts coming on stream, we're still no closer to any solutions on the alternative use. And I don't see disposal as an option. I mean, I think everything's got to have a use, and we've got to go in with that view. But my concern is that we're actually getting our eye off the ball, and I think a lot of that stuff will happen, and we've only got limited control over that. But what we do have some control on is how we address the use of the recycled water at the end. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we face, because in terms of the infrastructure work, that's already in action. That's going to happen, and that's underway. But I'm still concerned that we haven't made a lot of progress yet on the alternative use, and I think that's the game changer for this overall project.
Thank you, and I agree, and I think you're well aware we're on a similar page where this goes. And I think when you meet only like 4 times a year, but the whole Three Waters thing is certainly, from my perspective, come very left field. It just suddenly this massive issue right in the heart of this room of our community, and you know, as you say, information. Once council's got all the information, and then it can start making its you know, its plans and what it thinks, and displaying that and communicating that through the community. So if we can move off that now, happy to move off that. Ron, did you want to have a comment, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to support the intent that Shannon has given the table. So I do think that this is some strategic work that we need to work on. I do think that as committee members, we need to have a position on the future of this committee. in light of those reforms. And I think we should do some work around it. So I don't know how we can do the work, but as you just said, we don't meet enough.
Thank you, Ron. So just as we move on with page 10, Dave, could you just reiterate the work of the Kiwa Group, how it sits in relationship to this committee, just so anyone online potentially understand, like it seems to be this other committee, then this committee, then there's full council committee, how does this work?
So through you, Chair, the Kiwa Group is part of the resource consent for the wastewater treatment plant. So the Kiwa Group's proper name is the Turanganuia Kiwa Water Quality Enhancement Project, hence why we have an acronym for it. So the Kiwa Group is part of the consent, and as part of the consent, its purpose is to inform this committee and to undertake work and make recommendations to this committee. It is not a group of staff. This is externals that you have put onto it. So there are external members of this. We as staff only support by facilitating their meetings, and we have one person from council who is able to attend the meetings as a member. The Kiwa Group will make recommendations to you as to what are the things that it would like to look at for the year to set up a work program, which we will then look to support once you've given a mandate. The WMC is able to make recommendations to council for things that need to be done. It also looks at the performance of the plant and can recommend to council if things need to change. So council has the overall say on those things. However, this committee is able to make recommendations and to be able to direct the Kiwa Group and ourselves to be undertaking research and to look into things. So the Kiwa Group have met to look at what is their work program for this year that we have upcoming. And I know that Ian wanted to be here today, but he's an apology. He's had to be somewhere else. But the Kiwa Group have met and they've come up with a number of topics that they would like to bring to the WMC for consideration and for a work program to be developed up between us and them. But they wanted to get an approval at a high level first around these are the topics that they would like to look into. And for us to be able to go away and build up a work program to bring to you at your next meeting with the associated budgets for what we're able to support or where we would have to get funding from external parties from.
Thanks for that. So that's the Kiwa Group, the acronym, obviously, its role in relationship to how it works up with us. So Ian is the chair of it. Ian Ruru is the chair, and as I say, he's an apology today. But I suppose we should look through each of these line items. There's 6 of them. So does anyone have a particular comment they'd like to make about any of the 6 bullet points on page 10? Go, Ronald.
I guess just for clarity, though, they have a current work plan. Where is that at?
So through the chair, the main focus for the Kiwa Group last year was the mortuary waste implementation and getting that bylaw through. So they undertook a lot of work with council officers around getting the mortuary bylaw approved. And there is still some work around the design and the delivery of the Wisconsin Mount and things at Tarihiru that we will be working through with them. We've said that a lot of the work program was also around the wastewater treatment plant and providing us advice there. So we've said now that those things are in train, we will update you on where they are at, but what are the issues that you want to be working on going forward? And this is what they came back as a program for this year.
Thank you. And thank you for the explanation, Dave. I don't know whether to raise this in this piece or in the next, but as you mentioned, Kiwa is a function of the resource consent. Part of the resource consent is our requirement to remove the wastewater from the bay. We're doing that through our alternative use and disposal. And then in the next report, I see part of that alternative use and disposal funding is going to support the Kiwa Group. Surely the Kiwa Group should already be funded and it shouldn't be coming out of that, because that is specifically one of the requirements of our resource consent, the core reason for the Kiwa Group to exist, and yet we're using money we've set aside specifically for alternative use and disposal to fund that group. It seems like they must be working more on Three Waters with their current resources, and we're topping up for their specific purpose.
So through the chair, the AUD work that's undertaken by the Kiwa Group is funded by the AUD component. When they are giving advice, they've done a lot of work around recommendations that this committee has seen. They've seen papers before they've come up to here. So it's been very much focused on the AUD component. The group give us technical advice to be able to bring to you for your consideration as governors. They only get funded from the AUD component because that's the AUD part of the work that they're doing for us. With the other facets of work that Kiwa does for us, they normally get funded by the project that has been worked on at that stage. They have a very wide mandate. So their mandate is to projects that improve the Māori of Tūranganui Kiwa. So it's a very wide mandate. So we pick the project code that relates to the work, pays for the work that we're doing with Kiwa. For the work that we're doing going forward, so if it was, say, Drainwise, and they were going to be working with us within Drainwise, the budget for that associated work would come out of Drainwise because that would be the project funding that time and the expertise that we're getting. I must say we get very good value for money from the expert advice we get within Kiwa because it's for the meetings and we get huge downloads of advice and technical expertise for quite short periods. This is not big money that we're talking about that we're paying to the Kiwa Group.
You know, I was fortunate enough to go to a Kiwa presentation yesterday by walk about some pūtea that's been, am I allowed to tell these ones?
Oh, no.
Oh,
Through the chair, we'll have a discussion on that in public excluded.
no, okay, sorry. But again, on the Kiwa Group, you know, I'll be honest to you, the Kiwa Group was quite comfortable saying that they represent the whole of Turanga, iwi, hapu. I can honestly say that they're all there. Each individual hapu and iwi are there, and they're very comfortable in their role. I'd like to promote, because within all the applications, they're referred to as the Mātauranga Māori component of all the applications. So they're more than just the Kiwa Group. So they provide their Mātauranga Māori from the iwi perspective to this council to endorse our kaupapas that we do. Yeah, sorry.
So through the chair, just in the absence of any of the Kiwa Group members, I was at this meeting where we discussed what they want to work on for this year. There are a couple of things that fit within the Kiwa Group's mandate, and there are some other issues that need to be discussed separately. So the first bullet point there is in relation to governance representation at WMC, and that's a completely separate topic for this table or for the Kiwa table. So that is something that we've said we recommend that happens between iwi, and that happens separately. So that conversation, and that was around different groups and different representation potentially attending the WMC going forward. So we've said that that's a conversation separate from here. We have had, the committee knows, we've had a number of iwi and hapu that are wanting to come onto the WMC, but that's something that we are extremely uncomfortable. That's got to come from our iwi representatives for them to tell us who comes on this. That's why the recommendation has been tabled to say that a hui gets held between iwi to discuss that, and that was the recommendation from the Kiwa Group. So with these recommendations, they're straight from Kiwa. Staff haven't touched these. They're the ones that they wanted to put forward to the WMC, and we don't have the ability, nor should we, to change their recommendations that they make for this table. So that's why the first one's there, and I think that one is self-explanatory, unless there's any questions on that.
So after your korero, we'll remove that one.
So through the chair, we've put it to the WMC to say, the WMC, who representatives, it's for you to decide who comes to this table, and that you can meet to discuss that if you feel the need to do that. That's not for this table to, oh, sorry, respectfully, it's your call as governors.
It's not for Kiwa to do it either. No.
Yeah, I'm just not sure whether the appropriate body to be conducting those sort of korero, but again, that's something we probably need to.
Take offline.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just, pardon?
So through the chair, would you like that one there's an opportunity to decline that one if you'd like around the request for a governance, or amend it to say it is for iwi to discuss the governance representation and leave it at that and not have any further comeback from it. It's your call as committee.
I'm happy with what David said, Chair. But I do note, I wondered why it came up, and I'm on page 18, and it's tangata whenua Māori engagement. And it's just got a little inference there from Trust Tairāwhiti. With their money, I guess, requires, integrates tangata whenua consultation requirement, and whether somebody has promoted Trust Tairāwhiti's request to this level.
So through the chair, this request has come from Kiwa Group members themselves. It's not Trust Tairāwhiti.
Microphone.
We've seen that in past weeks, the challenge coming from the other hapu, and it's also there saying that you were going to table the paper, but
You know,
I support Leroy's
Leroy's.
recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah. Leroy, did you want to talk? Oh, no.
No.
Right. Microphone, please. Please use the microphone.
sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm pretty comfortable with the bylaw one. That's sort of, that's just a.
Okay. Larry,
And I've got no problem moving these recommendations, but I just do query the bylaw one because, I don't use wet wipes myself and I don't believe them. I know the damage they're doing them, but to actually put a bylaw in place to prohibit people buying them or using them in our region, I think it's going to be a pretty tall order because that's impeding on people's rights. So I'm not quite sure if the energy put into that should not be put into the other parts more. But I certainly agree that we should be putting alarm bells out there about the consequences of wet wipes into our wastewater management system and voicing our disapproval of the use of them as much as possible. But to actually put a bylaw in place is probably a step too far for me.
I think it's probably a desired outcome, but in reality, in practical terms, I think it's miles off it.
So through the chair, through the chair, we haven't been able to undertake any legal advice or anything from this recommendation from the Kiwa Group. So we haven't looked into the legalities of a bylaw. It came from them looking at the Drainwise program and trying to stop the overflows, and the wet wipes are a huge contributing factor to the fatbergs and everything we're having. So they were looking at what is a pragmatic step. We'll just get rid of them being sold within Tairāwhiti. So that was something that they wanted to be able to have a mandate to go, yep, go away and have a look at it, see if it's legal to do or not, and come back as to whether or not it can be done and go from there. The other ones that are there, just if I can quickly go back to around the Kiwa Group, around the Three Waters, that was something that you discussed earlier around what's the implications. So they said, could we give some advice to you about what the Three Waters impacts will be for the WMC and for Kiwa Group? So that was the driver in behind that. They were also, oh, sorry, are there any questions on that before I move to B? If that's...
I'm just going to interject just to help Julie out here. Our ultimate decision on the very first bullet point is that's going to be passed back to Manawatu to decide, right?
To this committee, yes.
So through the chair, if you'd like that to be that, you can put that, or you can simply decline that recommendation and just say no.
We just got a clarity for Joel. Take minutes.
Yes, Leroy and I said decline.
So because you can do it as a vote, just say you do not approve a hui being held to discuss representation, and then it's cleanly and done. That's your call to do as committee.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Dave. Water.
So the Three Waters, just to provide some around the review and providing recommendations going forward, which we think is pragmatic, just around what the impacts are for Kiwa and in the component of wastewater management once we have that advice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So through the chair, you're happy to define this down if you would like to around, we envisage it's about being the resource consent, not the wider, as your previous discussion was, that is your discussions to have as governors with your own entities to bring back as your individual entities. It's not a tairāwhiti version of it. You very much obviously have your own mana that you want to be able to assert when it comes to these reforms.
Pinay, you have a comment?
I think there is an aspect for Kiwa in Three Waters, but it may not be what they feel it is. So there is quite a strong program happening with the Toitu Tairāwhiti chairs that this Kiwa group shouldn't cut across. I was trying to think of the official who's driving a lot of that, and it's Sarah Badley. She's very formidable. And a lot of the discussions for iwi are not the discussions that you might think about here in this room. So the discussions are about what a water service bill will achieve. They're not asking us, do you want a water service bill? They're telling us what it will achieve. That's why I'm thinking council better hurry up and get into the swing of things as well. Taumata Arawai is a group that's been offered power sharing alongside these entities that will exist in Three Waters. And then I think it's the third one, the service delivery reform, where I think Kiwa need to look at things specifically in the paddock, so to speak, and how it will affect, how a transition or not will affect the ongoing programs.
So to cover that, if I may suggest, is it changing that the Kiwa group develops a scope of work for input regarding the Three Waters reform and their impacts on the wastewater treatment plant consent? Because that would then cover and limit it to that, and then they would provide a scope back to the WMC for you to approve or not, which would then only the impacts to the wastewater treatment plant consent as opposed to any other aspect of Three Waters. Would that be a better suggestion?
Yes, thank you. They need to apply a locality torch, so to speak, and let all us other ones work in the ether up there. Yep.
Right. Shannon then, Kerry.
Thank you. It's discussion's gone in an interesting direction. I quite like it. But so I'm going to chip in on the bylaw piece as well.
Yeah.
Kiwa's are technical experts around water quality. They're not bylaw experts or legal experts. A bylaw is a specific tool. If they were investigating it in respect to its impact on on water quality, we already understand that impact. Actually, what's required is a way to minimize the harm, and whether they're the correct group to determine how to minimize that harm. For example, it could be campaigning against products that show that they are flushable on their packaging. It could be taking legal steps in that direction. It could be a bylaw. It could be an education campaign, but I'm not sure that Kiwa, again, is the right group to do that as a group of technical experts around water quality. It seems that potentially we need to put a lot more strategic work into the direction that we gain value from Kiwa. And specific, if that's this committee's responsibility, then I think that should be a piece that comes up later on. And at the moment, it would make me uncomfortable them progressing into investigation, implementation of a bylaw, which isn't their responsibility.
So more prescriptive. Sorry, Kerry.
I'm going to take a slightly different tack. While I think we can all recognise the huge damage that wet wipes do, and there are obvious implications of the fact that people continue to flush them. And if we were to take a zero tolerance policy to stormwater overflows that result from essentially poor behaviour, that would fit within that. However, to Shannon's point, the outcome specifically related to the awa is not going to consider the implications, of the implications on people's lives if you just remove a product that is, huge numbers of the population are heavily dependent on. However, this kind of proposition is potentially a good place to start a conversation about our behaviour, and the implications if you don't manage your behaviour is we're going to end up with, because we want a zero tolerance policy, if the education campaign, if the steps that go before do not deliver the outcomes that we want, and we have a zero tolerance policy, then this might be where we land. I feel like it's possibly, if they're saying this is the direction of travel, that's fine, but let's give the public some notice and say, hey, look, we're going to give this group this much time. And at the end of that, if our campaign in X, Y, and Z hasn't worked, then actually we value having zero stormwater overflows this highly enough to take quite drastic steps. And that sends a really clear message to the public.
Zero.
I think there's not too much sort of argument. I think we all recognise the damage that those do. And I'm supporting Shannon. It's whether the Kiwa group is the appropriate group to be driving that, because again, my concern is it distracts them from that more technical, specific stuff that we need them to be doing. And I mean, this potentially just opens a whole can of worms that, I'm not sure where it ultimately ends up. So, pardon?
Just using mics.
Sorry, it's about conversation, the narrative out there in the community, and if you reduce it by a certain amount, and at least. And I agree, it's maybe not a Kiwa kaupapa, but I mean, there's other voices.
It's a pity Ian couldn't be with us today. I think it would be good to have their perspective also. Dave, do you want to?
So through the chair, we have a number of things that we're looking at with the Drainwise campaign. We've done a number of social media, we've done billboards, we've done ads on radio, we've done a whole range of things around wet wipes. They are a continuing issue for us. I'm trying not to rewrite all of these recommendations. However, it could be that they investigate options to reduce the impacts of wet wipes on the wastewater network and provide those back if you wanted them to look at something like that. When it comes to wet wipes, it is something that's in our program of work. We will be redoing the campaigns again soon. It is something we are looking at. It is a tool that could potentially be put into the chest to be able to use. We don't know if it is legal or not, and how effective it would be, but it is just something that they have asked to be put up. So it's up to yourselves whether or not you want to leave it there as a recommendation to do, or around leave it in B, which is how they'll come back to you with a work program that looks at how they will monitor and provide recommendations on the Drainwise program, because that could cover that off within there, because Drainwise is around blockages. It's not just around downpipes and gully traps and those things. So you could have it as part of those recommendations if you wanted to.
I definitely support that. I think to try and knock it out is just completely, it's going to be difficult. Soon it'll be these things in the drains too. Masks. Pene.
Tautoko your recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, I just sort of like the wording of it to around, pardon? All right. So any other comments on the bullet points? It's been quite invigorating.
Just the last one would be D. So D is around wharatutu and tikaraka, around wastewater and what is discharged into the waipawa. So we have the consents for tikaraka, and the committee's aware, committee may not be aware, a couple of years ago, there was discussions around what can be done to further enhance and look at alternative use and disposal for tikaraka in particular, because it discharges into the headwaters of the waipawa. And it's a reliant water for so many different things. So it's around Kiwa group wanting to look at what's happening up there. Are there any changes that could be recommended to council and to the committee? And this is very much around a technical of how we're treating, what we're doing, what's our long-term plans for up there at Tikaraka with the wastewater treatment plant that we have up there. So that is something that they would look to. So they're wanting to go away, come back to you with a work program of what looking at it from a Kiwa perspective would look like for yourselves and for us as staff to then provide recommendations.
Right. No. Happy? Can we move? Oh, sorry, Ronald.
Sorry, Joe, can you just clarify the inclusion of wharatiri?
So through the chair, it was around some of the septic tanks and issues that are up at Whatutu and how those are being managed and their impacts or not on the Waipawa catchment for what's happening up there.
Yes, so I'm fine with the work, continue work with Te Karakarikiri, but perhaps rather than isolated to Whatutu, it should be a regional approach to that issue. Not just Whatutu, discharge into riverways.
Yeah.
Happy
Well,
for it to be a
that-
pilot, but I don't want it to be the focus. Sorry, Chair.
No,
Happy for it to be a pilot, but not the focus.
not the focus.
So through the chair, if we could change it to the wastewater provisions for Tikaraka and then add something separate in around advice of septic tank impacts on river catchments or something to
Yeah,
that effect, that they come back to you as a wider.
it's softer.
Yeah, I guess, sorry.
Go.
I guess, Mr. Chair, some of my concerns around the costs for individual households to dispose of their waste on their own sites. So it could be quite a sensitive program, understanding the current costs to build that into your house system.
Angus,
So I don't want to be adding cost on the whānau who can't afford it right now.
no, fair enough.
I just wanted to, sorry, I just wanted to update, would those two kaupapa be part of that thing we're going to talk about later? Would they put into that or are they a separate, you know, the initiative?
So through the chair, those would be separate.
Aye. Well, that's-
If rather than make a recommendation, are you okay if that comes back as part of the work program from Kiwa once we talk about the impacts of that size and scale? So for D, we just delete Whatutu at this stage and just say for Tikaraka, and then they come back with some wider recommendations. Because I'm worried that if I try and quickly draft something now, we're going to miss
Get it
something.
wrong.
So I'd rather them just come back with that in their refined work program, if that's okay with the committee.
Okay, I'd like to take us to the AUD, what, 14?
Can we just for
Oh.
Jill's benefit,
Yeah.
if it's all right with the committee, we might take these separately, each of the line items. that
Oh,
are
okay.
there, so then she can take the vote for it. And would you like me to lead that, Chair?
Yes,
Because I've
I
got a
would
few of
like you
the
to lead that.
scribbles written down that I'm now going to try and read.
We do, we're gonna, okay, so who moved it? Larry moved
I
it.
was happy, yeah, to move it up, I was going to change some now.
Well, we're gonna, so we're gonna take these one for one, but we'll move and second them collectively as a collective. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
So it's moved by councillor Foster, seconded by councillor Dowsing, sorry, Shannon. And Dave's gonna walk us through item for item.
So, sorry, Jill, I'm looking to you just to make sure I'm not going too fast for you. So the first one there approves that a hui held between mana whenua to discuss governance representation. So all in favour?
Aye. Against?
No, you're not in
No,
favour.
no.
It's, no. Through the chair, I'm putting it as read for you to decline because I don't want to try and rewrite it because it'll make it too difficult. So all in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Declined, so that one has not gone through, so that one failed. So the work program,
Yeah.
2A, and Jill, I'll read this one. So the way that you've rescoped it is for 2A to read, the Kiwa Group to develop a scope of work to investigate the impacts of the Three Waters reform on the wastewater treatment plant consent. That's how that's been written as 2A. All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. So B is as read, which is the Kiwa Group will monitor and provide recommendations on the Drain Wise program to Wastewater Management Committee.
Yeah.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. C, you have chosen, this is the one where you've said you would like that to be done under B, so it's covered as part of that, so you don't want to investigate a bylaw at this
Bylaw.
stage as what you've discussed, so The project plan for the investigation of the implementation of a bylaw to prohibit wet wipes being sold in Tairāwhiti. This has been covered by B. So all those in favour? Contrary?
Aye.
So it's failed. And then D now reads, a project plan to review the wastewater provisions for Tikaraka and report back to the Wastewater Management Committee. All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Yes. Kerry.
Just around that recommendation one that was declined, do we need to add a secretarial note or something? Because there's no explanation that we're supporting to happen instead.
No,
No, through the
it's a
committee.
decision made.
Yeah.
No.
Was there sort of a note about, sorry, was there a note about the Wharaturi? What was that? Do you need?
So through the chair, just for that was
D.
Ron's suggestion around the wider impacts of wastewater on our waterways. And that's something that we'll discuss and then come back to you with it once we understand a bit of scope and scale on that. And we wouldn't mind some time with staff to understand what work we already have underway to then provide in a paper back to you. So I'm happy to take that as an action that we will report back on what that scope of work could look like so that it doesn't get lost. So we'll bring something back in and around that. And Jill, I'll talk about the action on that one.
Councillor Foster.
Just on that one, there's a lot of waterways around the area. It's a huge amount. And I kind of feel that the impact of septic systems on the Waipawa could be a stronger focus. And from that, you could move into other areas. But, you know, there is quite a lot of septic systems that do affect the Waipawa. And that may be a better direction to go into because it's more focused, rather than being so holistic with a regional wide one. I mean, I do appreciate we need to do that, but I just know the work required to undertake it at the moment. And the learnings from doing one at Waipawa to start with would be probably relevant to the rest of the region. But just my.
We'll bring you a report back around this, and because the scope that you have to look when it comes to Te Rangirewa Kiwi and improving the Māori, there's a huge range of work that we can bring back. And I would suggest it's not just the wastewater impacts, it's the discharges. There's a number of other things, but we can bring you what that looks like, and then you can help refine the scope of that going forward as to which parts you would like it to be looked into.
Thank you, Chair. Just, I guess for Larry's sake, a likely over the top will be quite beneficial. The big one with the septic is not so much the information as the interpretation by the council and resource consents and the endless requirement for report after report after report. And we can agree that all our kainga are on the worst pieces of land that are available. There are septic problems everywhere. Thank you.
Right, can you get up 10? Move up 10. Everybody got every, Joe, you happy, Joe? Good. Let's go to 14. So this is obviously a noting paper. Dave, would you like to comment on that? This is it.
So through the chair, the only addition that I'd like to highlight is we have met with Cawthorn, as I know a number of iwi partners have as well, to discuss their application that they will be making later on this year. So we've met with them around alternative use and disposal, and they are refining up what concept it is that they will be looking to put forward the funding application for the Endeavour Fund. We were the last to meet with them Friday last week, I think it was, and they were, I think, overwhelmed by the opportunities that there are and trying to refine them into what is a plan to be able to take forward. The other part is the mortuary waste, the Wisconsin mound. We have been working through the designs that we have for that, and a project manager has been appointed to help be able to move that forward. So hopefully I'll be able to bring you some quite quick timeframes for the implementation of that at our next tour.
Any questions of Dave? Leroy?
Yeah, just as clarification, is what sort of time frame are we looking at? Because I mean, it's saying we've still got to do the design, consent and build. And I thought we'd sort of understood that the design was put in front of us and we're saying, yep, that's going to carry on. And then if there's further delays with consent, and then the bill has got to follow that. So effectively, the problem still exists. We've got a solution sort of on standby here, but yeah, I guess that's my question is what's the time frame?
So through the chair, the designs are, as you say, sorry, Roy, they are completed. So we know exactly from the engineering point of view, the bit that we're finalising is with the team out of Tarihiru to make sure that everything's going to fit in around the roadways and those kind of things for the final consent to be lodged. The consent is quite a simple one and we're expecting it to go through quite quickly. So just going through the chair, I would like to hit this construction season this summer, is what I've told the team. So we're looking at this construction season, but we're able to get underway. So I would expect construction November, December this year is where I will be looking to see, is what I've told them.
Good progress. I mean, there's 26 pages on this, Kerry.
Yeah, just under climate change implications and activity use of recycled water. I just had a question that I missed earlier around how what we've got budgeted in the LTP is 750 odd thousand,
Yep.
right? So the new entities have sort of made rough commitments, or they've been asked to make commitments around what's committed for the first 3 years of our LTP. Is it possible or worthwhile for us looking at I appreciate the work that's gone into the plan, the strategic plan around it. How much confidence can we have that we've got enough in our plans to ensure the progress, no matter what happens to the reform process?
So through the chair, the AUD funding that's set aside at the moment is for the investigation. There is further funding that sits in the 30-year infrastructure strategy for purchases of land and for installation. So there's, I think it's in the millions of dollars that sits further out in the infrastructure strategy, which is what we want to understand the cost and implications of anything going forward. And that's part of the business case for any of those things that are going to be implemented as well.
So that the business case that hopefully Crawthorne, this results in something concrete. If we're able to complete it quickly enough and we have a body of work that says this is the roadmap and we're actually moving towards this, even though we haven't budgeted for that big spend to happen in the next 3 years, what kind of weight does that give to any reform process in terms of maintaining that part? Is that enough, or is it not enough in your experience as someone who knows a lot more about this than us?
Through the chair, we are still working through those details with DIA about what happens with our 30-year infrastructure strategy commitments with any of the changes going forward. But it is something that we have put on the table very early with DIA and with all of the reform around we're on a different kaupapa here in Tairāwhiti. We want to do things that may be further ahead or different from everybody else, but that's because we're Tairāwhiti and that's what we want to do. So they understand the importance of the work that we are doing in this space.
Councillor Dowson.
Thank you. Just wondering if we will likely have an opportunity to meet Cawthorne and Zoom with them and understand some of their previous projects, or whether that's just some information that can be shared offline, just to know more about them.
So Chair, happy to send through some of the early stuff that we've got from them, and more than happy to share the proposal before it gets submitted to the Endeavour Fund. It's likely that it would need a mandate from this committee to go to the Endeavour Fund. So absolutely happy to share that.
Thanks, Chair. And Dave, so yeah, we've talked about the level of commitments that Kerry's mentioned from our LTP, and the Endeavour Fund is to help us better, sooner and more convenient. And we don't yet know what that fund target that you're aiming for.
So through the chair, the purpose of the Endeavour Fund is to help the application, is to help get a body of work over the line that proves a use for AUD going forward. It's around undertaking the work, and they're working on what that looks like, around what a study, and it's a 5-year study around what it would look like to implement AUD within our Tūranga area. And that's the application that they're going away to draft. They've taken a whole lot of information from ourselves and from the hui that they've held to then come back with a proposal for us to endorse, to put forward to Endeavour. So the whole reason for it is to help get this over the line. And they're looking at how they can support that through an application to Endeavour and using Hawthorn's skills.
Angus.
So again, I was fortunate enough to go to Hui last week. Hawthorn gave a bit of a presentation to, again, the full collective of iwi and Huffman representatives. And just to cut a long story short, I guess for us, the conversation was around their purpose in the funding application, obviously the research part, where the Kiwa group fits in within that application as the iwi mātauranga rōpū. And then I think the bigger question for us was around the mauri of the water. That we have to get to that answer very quickly, because we've already been told by one of our kaumātua that it can't change, but he was so yeah, that's without being too scientific. It's about that mauri aspect, whether I guess horticulture are happy to put that on their crops. That's the big go ahead, I guess, for us. If they're all happy, then iwi again, a bit frustrated that they have to maybe look at the alternative of recycled water. But I guess, yeah, again, that was the big thorn in our side, was the mauri. How soon do we get to the mauri? That'll be good to know. Okay.
Leroy, right? Okay, any other comments around that? So we're going to slip along to 40, drain wise. Dave, you want to lead by Chris Hoffman? Oh, sorry. Yeah, moved by Councillor Dowsing, seconded by Councillor Worsnop. Thank you. Sorry about that.
So through the chair, I'll take the report as read. If the committee will allow me, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Drainwise team, the wastewater teams and the stormwater teams. They've been working really hard to try and reduce our overflows, and I can now safely say it's been over a year. It's for us. Oh no, it's been more. 17th of July 2020 was the last time we had a wastewater overflow. We've come close. That happens to us all the time. We've come really close, but I just want to say it's a huge amount of work that's happened behind the scenes from the teams that have been out there doing the real hard work to make that happen. In particular, Phil Dodds and some of the big improvements he's made to the wastewater pump stations, the way that he operates those have been really impressive. But then also down to Josh Taylor and Mark Adam, who are actually out there literally on their hands and knees repairing gully traps and doing this work. So really proud of the wastewater and stormwater teams and what they've been doing in the drainwise space.
Any questions or conversation around drainwise? Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you. Now, certainly want to congratulate you as well for having over a year without wastewater going into our rivers. I think it's a great achievement, and hopefully we can continue that to be a lot longer. And we have had some significant rainfalls actually, because I monitor it pretty closely from the Harini Street interceptor. As soon as it overflows, you know it's going to be wastewater in the river. And I haven't seen that happen at all. And we have had some heavy downpours where normally that would be the case, where the scales have to be released. So yeah, congratulations. But is there any particular work that's been done in drainwise that you would think has been the most significant achiever of where we're at the moment?
Through the chair, I think it's been 1,000 cuts that's got us there. So it's a whole lot of little improvements and changes in the way that we do things. So changing of pump station to cutter pumps rather than normal pumps, the increased monitoring, the increased jetting, the delivery of the capital works program. As you can see there, they've delivered everything they said they were going to do. The underspends are because we were able to do it more efficiently than what we thought we did when we could budget for it, which for a council, that's impressive. So they have been getting on and doing the work that they were supposed to be doing. So it has been a real team effort where the team has done a really good job getting out there and getting it done.
Have you found that the community has got a lot more on board about compliance on their own properties from our whole exercise?
Through the chair, we continue to work with the community, and we've had some really good and simple things where somebody has rung up and told us. We then go out and investigate and can fix the problem really quickly. So we really encourage the community to keep informing us if there's ponding, if there's gully traps that are getting wet, if there's downpipes into gully traps, please check, let us know so that we're able to go out and help fix.
Great, thank you, Dave. I'm sure the community are noticing that, you know, this isn't happening anywhere now like it used to happen. So credit's got to come to the overall team. Kerry.
So my question was around, given that we haven't had an overflow in quite a long time and we have been still doing this work along the way, how do we keep an understanding of what our new thresholds are? So typically, you know, if we get X amount of rain in X hours, this is where you start hitting a red line. How do you keep tabs on that when you're not getting necessarily those? To be fair, while I think it's awesome, I think we also need to be mindful of the fact that comparatively speaking, we have just had 2 quite dry years. So it would be awful to give everyone the impression that you're not going to have any more and then we have a really wet year. So it's still ongoing, right? How do we keep tabs on that? And then I've just got one more question.
So through the chair, 100% we're not there yet and we've got a long way to go, but we're showing an improvement, and that's what I think is the message from us today. We have debated this quite long and hard as staff as to, well, how do we compare apples, oranges, and decide whether or not we have made progress. We have got some numbers that we know have started to come up, which I'm not going to say publicly, because the moment I do, then I know that I'll get called out because we'll have that size rain event. But the team, we have noticed that we can handle more rain than normal. The other reason for that is, of course, we've got our resource consent sitting in at the moment for the wet weather and dry weather overflow. So we're waiting for the outcome of that. But you'll see that that is going to have a reduced target that we're now working towards as well, which you'll be able to see us tracking our progress against that as part of our monitoring.
And my other question was around the usefulness of the likes of the LiDAR that we did region-wide and what that can tell you about the areas of our that people might not necessarily report, but that you could actually see using, you know, technology basically.
So through the chair, the LiDAR of the city has been a huge tool for the DrainWise team to specifically target areas where we know we have ponding areas, that it may say be ponding at your house, but it's actually flowing through the fence and going into the neighbour's gully trap. So the LiDAR was helping us kind of narrow down our search for the areas that we were going to do, because we could see where we knew that logic tells us that's a wet area or it's a low area. The team would then go and ground truth that by checking. So we use that to very much narrow down our search areas, prioritise those, and then start working our way back up from them. It's been a very useful tool for us.
Councillor Dowsing.
Sorry, I just wanted to be really specific about our congratulations and ask you to pass them on to the team. I think I speak for everyone here that it's an amazing improvement to not see those issues. And it's not something the public notice. The public only notice when there's a problem. No one ever notices when there's not one. So yeah, really, really happy to see that all of the effort made has made a difference. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think, yeah, it's important that it gets passed on because it's been a biggie. So I'd like to we move on to page 45. You'll move, thank you. Leroy second. Thank you. Good. Okay, update on the treatment plant, David. Exciting.
So through the chair, we have undertaken a number of enabling works down at Bank Street on the wastewater treatment plant. So the McConnell Dow have started some of the earthworks necessary on the Bank Street site. So when I say the Bank Street site, I'll talk about the existing site at the moment, where the first phase of work is to build a new pump station to move the wastewater from the old site to the new site. So they have started the groundworks there, and the sheet piling was completed on Monday. So they will now start the excavation down to about 8 meters to be able to install the pump station that needs to go in through there. So the enabling works is to get the pump station underway so that we can go through to the land that we've purchased on the other side, where you've seen there's been, the topsoil has now been removed. And we'll now start the groundworks there. The groundworks improvements have been started as well. So we're able to get work underway to start the groundworks while we're working with McConnell Dowell around the final detailing of the project. But we're pretty happy with the way that the works are underway. Obviously, we've lost a couple of weeks with COVID. We had some materials and staff that were locked in Auckland, which is niggly. So we've managed to get through that, but quite happy with how the process is underway at the moment and how things are working down there. So we were hoping to, at the next meeting, to be able to take you down and undertake a site tour of what's actually happening down on site. We're a couple of weeks behind, so there's not much to see at the moment except a big dirt pile. So we thought maybe next time when we've actually got some things, we'll take you down and show you what it is and where we're at down there as well.
Any questions? That's fantastic news. Kerry, you've got a question?
Sorry that everyone else might know this, but either maybe I did know and I've just forgotten. When do we expect to be able to be reusing water within the rest of the wastewater system, just in terms of a timeline? Because that would be a fairly momentous occasion, even to have partial reuse and less disposal.
So as soon as the plant's commissioned, we will start reusing the water from that's coming at Back Street. So the day we turn the key, we'll be able to use it for washing down the wastewater treatment plant.
Estimated build time?
23.
2023.
23.
So it's a wee way off, but any Pino? Oh, sorry, go Leroy.
Sorry, yeah, and I look forward to that day, but I think, again, the opportunity is that we don't want to start looking at what our options are on that use in 23. It's that work is really got to be getting done now, and yeah, again, sounding like a great record, but I still think that's going to be the proof of the pudding, is ultimately the use of that water. And even if it's on a small scale, I think that's got to be the ongoing part. Thank you.
Thank you, Leroy. Pino.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just on page 49. Is the figure of 7.5 million that was won from the Crown infrastructure projects, is that added to the 24.4 million or the 34.8 million?
So through the chair, that's within the 34.8 million. There's 7.5 million that's been from the Crown, is funded from Crown infrastructure projects.
So that was added to the 24.4 million.
Through the chair, yes.
Yeah.
But you had already committed to the 34.8 million.
So through the chair, we were able to fund it through the long-term plan because of the Crown infrastructure funding.
Thanks.
Okay. Good.
Just kind of building on that in terms of we were in a meeting yesterday that where the pressure, broadly speaking, both employment, resources, just everything. Is there, I guess, anything to report back in terms of our confidence in being able to realise our plans as they were drafted really reasonably recently, but obviously we're in a very dynamic environment at the moment?
Through the chair, it's probably going to be the only smart thing I've ever done, but purchasing well, sorry, it wasn't me, it was Neville and I, around the pre-purchasing of all of the plant we did 2 years ago. Has saved us. When we purchased that material, it saved us millions. It saved us so much money and so much time. That was a really key thing, was purchasing that, because it took a lot of the overseas risk and the delay out. We still have substantial risks around our project with COVID, with delays, but most of the materials we need, we have purchased, the big items, and we shouldn't be too reliant, but we do still have some things that are coming from offshore. But we're confident we can pull it off.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I just think it's just such great news to see that it's actually underway and activity down there. Look forward to the visit. So that Yeah, whatever, mover. Yeah, I've got Pene down there. And I've got Larry. Thank you for the prompting. Don't know what's going on today. So, yeah, so we'll move out of this meeting. Thank you for your attendance to this meeting. Pardon? Yeah, move into public excluded. Move